Hi, I'm Sid, CEO at GitLab, and this is our iteration office hours, where we try to find out how to make things smaller. And thanks for joining. And Tim has the first item on the agenda. Tim, do you want to verbalize that?
Yeah, thanks, Sid. One of the most common questions I hear from sales, from account managers, and from our prospects is, when can I replace my existing package manager vendor with GitLab's package offering? There's a lot of information to share as part of that because there's a lot of issues, there's epics. I'm wondering what's the best way to start to get that message out there so it's more visible and so that I could keep people updated on the progress that we're making over time.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think the name of the game there now is to collaborate with our community. This is a typical thing where we did the initial few ones, but now there's I think there's all in all like 26 formats that you should support, where there are people who have all their formats supported, but they have this one thing they also want. And those are the people who can contribute that. And on my kind of insistence on this page, we added a note like, hey, is your packaging management system not supported yet? Considering contributing to GitLab, with a link to our development documentation, plus saying, hey, these ones are already in progress, so you can kind of follow along how they do it. And we even ask like, hey, these are the ones we'd really, really like to see. So that was in a conversation with me and the product managers. In this case, the iteration is, let's support people already adding things instead of spending our energy adding packaging formats ourselves. And I think we still have like some way to go, because before our documentation is super, super clear about how to do this, and we make it as easy as possible to do this. But focusing on contribution is one of the things. The other thing is we have an awesome dependency proxy, but it needs Puma to run. So we need Puma to run on GitLab.com so we can start dogfooding that ourselves. There's a whole team focusing on getting Puma to run, and I think right now it's held up by the rugged extensions that we also need, and it's a complex thing. I think those are the things that will move the lever, but I'm not sure that exactly answers your question.
Yeah, I was more thinking of, I think I have clear steps and highlights of how we get there. One of those is definitely leveraging the community, but I'm wondering the message of letting sales and our customers know, one, that we are trying to replace their existing package manager vendor, and two, we can't do that yet, but here's what has to be true for you to be able to do that. And then three, giving them some sort of update of our progress so that they know when they could pull that switch. I'm wondering from more of like a communication and marketing perspective, if there are like iterative steps I could take to get there.
Yeah, I think what we can do is try to get to a single source of truth, because we have a list here. Then if you go into the development documentation, there's another list. Then there's a list of these ones are in progress, and then there's a list of these ones we're interested in. So that's four separate lists. What we could do instead, if have only the list here, and then say available in GitLab version. Now, if it's planned, then we link to the merge request for it. If it's our interest, we link to that. And if it's not there yet, we just invite people to do it. So use this available column to kind of demarcate the status. Deprecate this list and deprecate these two kind of sub lists. I think that would already kind of help to give an overview. And then hopefully we get to the point where all of these at least have like someone starting the work. So you can show like, okay, we're making a ton of progress, and this is probably how it looks. This is planned for this is planned for that.
That's really helpful. And yeah, definitely the having four lists is confusing. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thanks for asking.
And another thing I was planning is updating just the features page with a more like robust comparison. So we have like if Sonatype or JFrog are talking about features in a given way, that we make sure that we have that information there and that we say what's available and what's not. This way, customers have a quick view of seeing, okay, well, how do you compare? How do you compare yourself?
For sure. Like it's super important that we don't give the impression like we're one for one replacement. No, we're still growing, and this is the speed at which we're growing.
Okay, thank you. It was very helpful.
Thank you. Victor, you want to verbalize your question?
Sure. So we are just preparing our work for infrastructure as code. And the first issue we would like to tackle is actually to come up with a GitLab recommended infrastructure as code setup. That's quite often asked for, and that's it's quite obvious in the user interviews as well. There's always this question, why do I do it right? And one obvious question is that we have the GitLab Git flow. So how did it emerge? What was the iterative process in that? I see some differences, but still we might be able to learn a lot from it. Let me stop here and I will continue afterwards.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I think it's great, like as an MVC or as a first step, to just improve the documentation or write a blog post or tutorial. I think that is genius, and that is exactly on point. That is so compatible with our iteration value. It's like if you're going to automate something, the first thing you do is do it manually a few times and make sure you're automating it the right way. And I think a blog post or a doc change is a great venue for that. As for GitLab Flow, I think we call it GitLab Flow instead of GitLab Git Flow.
I just wanted to make specific.
Yeah, I made up most of that. And what I was seeing around the internet was there was GitHub Flow, but it wasn't sufficient for all the different scenarios. For example, if you had software that you needed to maintain with packaged with certain versions. So there was GitHub Flow and there was Git Flow. Git Flow, the very complex one, GitHub Flow, the very simple one. And with GitLab Flow, we specify those two, but also all kind of the in-between states. So the goal is to be more comprehensive.
Okay. Then, thank you. My next question is still related to this, how to come up with this flow, because what I say is that this is obviously a non-coding activity. And I'm thinking a lot, how could I get still the developers to really put all their knowledge and experience behind this? What would be your recommendation? They already came up with ideas that let's create reference architectures, POC projects, whatever, for this to be supported. And I see value on those as well, but I would like to iterate it as fast as possible.
Yeah, what I would do is, I think the most common language for infrastructure as code is Terraform. Give me a way to kind of version control my Terraform in GitLab, and then instead of me running Terraform apply or whatever it is from my command line, have it happen to CD. And I think then the next thing you'll probably hit is like, hey, you cannot have two jobs at the same time running Terraform apply. It gets messy. So give me a GitLab CI file that will have that mutex or that logging or preventing two jobs from running at the same time.
Yeah, thanks. My question here is a bit about different. It's about how to get our own engineers to work mostly on a non-coding activity, because what we want to solve here is actually just documentation, but to do it really in a thoughtful way, so it's really production ready what we write down.
I think the way to get to production ready here too is to first have some documentation and then improve it over time. So don't try to immediately have something that's production ready. Let's start somewhere, because it's much easier to have something and then validate that with someone than to try to create it from nothing. And I think one of the ways to do it, I know that our infrastructure team is using Terraform. So write that first tutorial yourself, and then go to our infrastructure team and ask like, hey, can you start doing this to deploy your Terraform? And they will say, no, of course not, because you're missing this and missing that. And then, okay, can we do half an hour? And the first objection you mentioned, can we add that to it? And then you come back the next day for the second part.
Thank you. It was great. Thanks.
Thank you. Jackie, thanks for putting something on the agenda. Do you want to verbalize it?
Yes, for sure. So I linked an issue here, and it's a pretty straightforward issue about redirecting via checkbox for GitLab pages domains. The heart of the problem, though, is that I have some natural hesitation in the engineering team side that if we implement incremental change to help satisfy some of our customers' use cases around redirects and GitLab pages, that it might cause rework in the future for another solution where we want to support different kinds of domains and GitLab on the roadmap. So I wanted to ask you, in the spirit of iteration, how do we balance this upfront implementation with the risk of needing to rewrite down the road?
Yeah. So obviously I don't oversee everything in this issue and the arguments and pros and cons, but my take would be that this is a slippery slope argument. And a slippery slope argument is what you're proposing is okay, but if we do even more, it would be really bad. So, and that's an invalid argument. You're not proposing to do more. Let's discuss it when I'm proposing to do more. I'm just proposing this today. So don't not do it because it could lead to more requests. We have to then look at those requests. So that would be my response.
Is there ever a time where it would be appropriate to say that the risk is too high, given that maybe my roadmap in 3 to 4 months suggests that we want to do something completely different? How do I still empower the engineers to confidently push back, even though I would tell them in this case, yo, no, don't worry about it.
Yeah. I think it's really about, okay, if we do it now and we know that we already want the next step on the slippery slope and we know that will involve a refactor, how much extra work is it to kind of change it at that time versus changing it now? For example, if you're looking at a database schema, it's relatively easy to create a new database table, but renaming it is much more work, especially if there's tons of data in it. So there someone could say, look, we already know we're going to need this 3 months down the road. Let's make sure we got this table right for everything. So we're not stuck with a migration that changes a database schema. And that might even be like, first one version, we migrate, we add the new one. And then in the next version, our code starts writing to the new one. And then we have a background task that copies it. Like renaming is rather hopefully easier. You can do non-blocking, but suppose it's something super complex. In that case, you could say, look, if we look over a 6-month span, we know that doing it the wrong way now is going to cause a lot more work. But that's the thing to check. That's not true for everything. If it's just about, well, we have to do this now and we have to do the other work then, but there's not a huge interest rate you pay for changing it, that's like, okay, well, but let's at least create some value now. We'll learn a bunch, and that will probably inform the refactor of the code. So big difference here between code and data. Having data in the wrong place tends to be much harder to solve than having the wrong code, because the code you can kind of atomically update.
That's helpful. I like that distinction where you're segmenting downstream impacts of data changes versus just code. That helps me kind of calculate the net present value of what a refactor would cost. So that's super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also have a second issue, and I'll go ahead and cover it here. So in evidence collection, we have a really great traction with particular regulated segments. They love this feature. But something that's making me a little nervous is that they want to upload a bunch of stuff to this artifact of the release. And this includes things like test data from external test systems. What I want to avoid, though, is uploading or creating this avenue by which they can upload anything to this artifact in releases, and it discourage adoption of future functionality in GitLab. Because anywhere where we create like a jumping off point, it could dissuade the adoption of features. So I wanted to kind of get your insight on, is this a normal worry or fear, or should I just kind of push that away to address the customer's needs and wants of supporting everything inside releases?
This is a call of quick takes that might be wrong, but I'm going to do my quick take. I would do it. I would allow people to upload those things. First of all, at GitLab, we want to be open. We want to be open to other systems. We don't want to force you to use GitLab CI for anything. We want to support Jenkins, anything else you use. Even if our product is superior in every single way, if someone just is really passionate about using drone or something like that, let them. We want to be open. We don't want to force you into GitLab. We want you to use GitLab because it's better. Now, second, I totally understand the request. Like if you're using, I don't know, HP Test Center, there's things in there that manual testing provisions or things that we can't do today. So it makes sense as well. And then the third thing is becoming a source of record is awesome. So if they're kind of using us to become the source of record, like, is this release good? And they go to GitLab to find that out. That's an amazing position to be in. My view from my room here is to the Salesforce tower. And Salesforce, you could view it as a CRM. But really, it's also a bit of a low-code solution to kind of build your own CRM. It's very customizable. And through all those customizations that people do, it becomes very hard to dislodge because you kind of, you adapted it to what you want. So I'd love for GitLab to be the source of record, and I'd love for people to customize GitLab a little bit to fit their needs, as long as we have convention over configuration. Out of the box, it does like the right thing, the happy path, and you don't need to configure it.
I like that. Okay, thank you. That was helpful.
Thanks for asking, Rupert.
Hey, Sid. So slightly less product and more tactical question here, but we're moving towards using a single template for all of our job postings across engineering. A small change in the template means that a small change in the copy in the template needs to be reflected in both the hiring process repo and in Greenhouse. It's pretty time consuming and inefficient to do this, and it makes it hard to maintain a single source of truth. I guess one suggestion has been that we build a template to host kind of a master template, but I just wondered if you had a suggestion on an easier or smaller approach.
Yeah, I think there's two things. First of all is the kind of the job families as you can see them on our static website. And there we definitely can use templates. We can easily include templates. I think the job family already includes a couple of templates. Then the problem is, okay, how do we make sure in Greenhouse they reflect our job family? And the two things I would look into, like, do we need the job family in Greenhouse, or can we just put a URL there that will point back to our static website? Because that seems preferable. And people understand URLs, they can click them, and they can just view the job family there. If that's not possible, can we automate it so that every 24 hours, all the job families in Greenhouse are populated from our static website?
Cool, that's helpful. I guess the only difference is that we don't have a job, because it's around job postings, and we have stage groups specific job postings. So we have a job family for product designers, but then we have a different job posting for product designers within the secure team compared to product designers within our configure team. I guess we could host each individual job advert for those different stage group roles within our handbook, but that would be a change that we need to make.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So I'm next. So I wanted to talk about an issue that we have coming up. It's for group deploy keys. And the idea is that when you have deploy keys that are joined between different groups, you want to join them together so it's easy to manage. And this was weighed pretty heavily by our development team, and they even offered a way to split this up. But the way that we're currently thinking about splitting up the issue doesn't give any customer value in the way that we're splitting it up until we complete the entire milestone. So I wanted to get your take on that.
Great. Can you, thanks for asking it. Can you elaborate a bit on how you're thinking about splitting it up today?
Yeah, so the first thing that we need to do is some kind of architectural change, because we currently don't really support this. And there's a lot of corner cases where we want to add or remove tokens from existing projects. So in the back end, what we're going to have to do is, if you have a project and now we add a new token, we're going to need to add it to where the group tokens are. And if you remove it, again, we need to remove all this access noise. And this currently this is not the way that it's designed at the moment. So we need to create this kind of framework. Even before we even start applying it in the UI, we want to add it to the settings page. So there's a lot of different steps in order for this to be complete. Today, there's a way to hack it through the APIs and like create your own script, but that's not really what we want to accomplish at the end of the day.
Let me see if I understand this right. So today, if you do a group deploy key, which allows you to kind of deploy multiple projects, you can add it to GitLab, but it just gets added to every project instead of being stored on the group level.
You actually have to do it manually for every single project. Add it, and then if you want to remove it manually, which is really annoying.
Yeah, can we just automate that? So I go to the group, and so there's two options. There's like, hey, let's add real group deploy keys and on the group level, and then every time we have to check not only the project level but also the group level. There's also kind of a hacky way, which is, hey, at the group level I can upload a deploy key, and the only thing that happens is that it's uploaded to every project plus stored at the group level, and every time you create a new project here, that key gets added. I think the hacky way, it's like, if we then move to the proper way later, is it going to be a disadvantage that we did the hacky way? Because then if you kind of if you also start checking on the group level, you have to keep both on the project and the group level. Is that a problem? I'm not able to oversee whether that's a problem or not. It seems it's very dangerous territory.
Yeah.
But it would be something to look into, because you'd be able to create value immediately. And you can even split it up even further, where you say, on the group level, you say, add deploy key to all current projects. That's the first thing. At least I don't have to do it 5 times. Then you change that in the next release and say, add deploy key to all projects and like all current and new projects. So now you also store it on the group level, and you keep adding it if a new project gets created. And then the third release, when you upload, when you already have that group deploy key, you change the code to also start checking that key, and then you don't have to like push it to all the projects as well. That would be a way to kind of iterate on it. It would accumulate the technical debt of having like multiple copies of the same deploy key, which would make rotation pretty annoying. So that's like, is it worth it? I think at least the initial one is certainly worth it, where you have a functionality to like add a deploy key to all current projects in this group. That's not a bad one. And then I think I'm a bit in doubt about when you create a new project, also add that key. That starts feeling a bit too hacky. But kind of automating what people are currently doing, I think that seems simple, and that seems like it adds value immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you. But by the way, I'm not saying you should actually do it. This is a tough one. I don't have an opinion. I just want to show options.
Yeah, I'll discuss it. Thank you.
Awesome. We're at time. Thanks so much, everyone.